Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks to the witnesses for being here. Mr. Mitter, I want to pick up where Senator Blumenthal started as well, this question about private enforcement and forced arbitration. You've said, I think, that antitrust is law enforcement, full stop. Wouldn't you agree that private enforcement is essential to a functional antitrust regime?
Absolutely. American antitrust enforcement rests on three pillars of a stool. One is the federal government, the second are state attorneys general, and the third are private plaintiffs. I think I agree with Ms. Mecky's comments 100% that it's essential for the average person to have the ability to come into court and vindicate their individual economic rights.
But they really don't today, do they? I mean, in case after case, particularly if you're dealing with companies of any size, and let's take our friends in the big tech world, for example. I mean, all of their user agreements are full of the classic contracts of adhesion. I mean, Google, you waive your right to sue us in court or to bring a class action case. I mean, there's virtually, I don't want to say no ability, but very, very diminished ability for any private citizen to bring any meaningful antitrust suit privately. I mean, isn't that real? Isn't that right?
I agree that's a real problem, and it highlights the need for strong enforcement that can make it easier for private plaintiffs to bring follow-on lawsuits. But even then, as you point out, if you're subject to a forced arbitration clause, that can be more difficult.
And wouldn't it be much more powerful in the antitrust sphere if we could also bring class action suits? Private plaintiffs could bring class action suits, which again are theoretically possible, but effectively barred by many of these adhesion contracts, right?
I agree. In many instances, a class action suit is actually the most efficient way to resolve these big questions.
I mean, so to me, this speaks for the need, given what these companies are doing, given what some of the courts have done doctrinally, it speaks to the need for Congress to legislate on this topic and to give, frankly, antitrust enforcers more tools and allow private litigants to get into court, allow private litigants to bring class action suits to enforce our nation's antitrust laws. I mean, don't you think that if Congress were to put a stop to these forced arbitration clauses in the antitrust context, we'd see a lot more private enforcement? I mean, would that be your prediction, Mr. Maynard?
That is what I would expect to see.
Do you want to weigh in on this, Ms. Meeky, at all?
I think this is extraordinarily important. Having access to lawyers to help vindicate your liberty in the form of damages is very, very important. But I would say that in the ecosystem that my friend Commissioner Metter just sort of outlined, class action cases are very good at getting people monetary damages. But it is really the federal government that takes the mantle for getting injunctive relief and equitable relief. And so when I was at DOJ, I had the privilege and great fortune of helping to sue Google twice and winning twice. And so when the Justice Department is in court fashioning remedies, they're talking about opening up markets, not just getting people money, which is important too, but making sure that our markets are delivering for the American people and are open for investment and innovation.
Yeah, so it's a both and, right? I think is what you're saying, yeah. But those damage awards, let me put it to you this way. When the FTC in 2019 fined, I think it was Facebook, $5 billion, if I remember correctly. Yeah, fined Facebook $5 billion. I remember I was brand new senator. I was new up here, and I thought, $5 billion, that's a lot of money. I thought, Facebook is really going to change its behavior now. Not so much. Their stock prices went up the next day. They did nothing meaningfully different. I agree with you completely about the need for robust federal enforcement, and I am a former state AG, Senator Blumenthal does as well, so I know that we believe in robust enforcement at the state level also. But there's something powerful about a damage award from a jury. I mean, to have private enforcers be able to get into court, get in front of a jury, particularly in a class action context, it's one of the reasons that these companies have fought Section 230 in a different context for years and years. They don't want to face juries. And I think the same is true for antitrust enforcement. They do not want to face private enforcers who are coming and bringing their cases into court. And I think one of the best things that we can do for antitrust enforcement is we ought to get rid of these forced arbitration clauses, and we ought to open up the courthouse doors for private citizens, and we ought to allow them to form class actions to do it. And we ought to do all of the above. I agree with you, Ms. Meeky, and Mr. Metter, we ought to empower your agency as well. Because we need, I think you are fundamentally right, we need more law enforcement, antitrust enforcement rather, is law enforcement, and we need more of it. Just in my last remaining seconds here, Mr. Metter, let me come back to you. You've said that big is bad, which I completely agree with, and that we need to consider structural remedies. Is that true outside of the tech sector? I know you said that about tech. Is that true more broadly?
I believe the competition concerns that have been most recognized in the tech sector are common in many other sectors. We need to enforce the antitrust laws evenly across the entire economy.
Good. Let me just give you one example here. 4 companies currently control over 80% of beef processing in this country, and very similarly high shares of poultry and pork. In Missouri, just in the last year, we have had 2 poultry plants closed by the dominant poultry processor, Tyson Food, canceling contracts with farmers, putting hundreds of people out of work across my state, really acting with total impunity. Why? Because they can, because they are essentially a monopolist. Is this the kind of thing that the FTC can take action on?
Yes, with the small caveat that the Department of Justice typically handles the packers, but the FTC sees this at the retail level as well. When there are a smaller number of packers, retailers pay higher prices, and then consumers pay higher prices, and then retailers want to merge and consolidate their own part of the supply chain to counteract that, and then it's sort of an arms race to see who can get the biggest, the fastest.
I'll end with this. Right now, beef processing is just one example, but it's a perfect example for a state like mine. The only people who win are the monopolists. You know, if you're a cattle rancher, you're not getting paid for your product. If you are a consumer at the grocery store, you're paying an arm and a leg for some hamburger. And yet, so the consumers are paying more, the farmers are getting paid less. Who is really making out like a bandit here? It's the monopolists. It's the 4 people, the 4 companies that control 80% of beef processing. That is not competition. We need more competition in this country, economy-wide. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.